Hey folks, hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. Let's get started here. What I have on the docket, I'm going to do like a fallacy of the week, fallacy of the day. Little talk about critical thinking. Maybe I'll do a little gear demo on this guy. This is a 1971 Gibson Les Paul recording. Very unique guitar, belongs to my neighbor. I cleaned it up for him. It was sitting under his bed for like 40 years. So I got it all fixed up and functional, and it's a really cool guitar. But it's one that I realized as I was messing with it, there's very few players that would know how to get the sounds out of that guitar because of its complicated electronics and because it uses low impedance pickups. It uses a completely different style of pickup that does not work with normal amps and would require you to do some different things to get it to work correctly. It actually has a transformer, so it actually will work with normal amps, but you won't get all the actual tones out of it if you do that. And I can maybe demonstrate and just kind of walk through a really classic piece of vintage gear and a good example of why vintage gear is not always highly valuable, because you can get these for less than a lot of early 70s guitars, and why it's not always desirable. Like, why just because it's vintage doesn't mean you're going to be able to use it well, because the truth is very few people are going to have a amp setup that they would know right away how to actually use a low impedance pickup guitar. They're very unique instruments, and they're really cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the fallacy of the day. I'm going to call this the bacon fallacy. The bacon fallacy. I'm stealing this one from Thomas Sowell. In an interview, he talked about the problem with assigning an average cost to a joint product. And so the bacon fallacy is where you are viewing as you're focusing on one thing that is made as part of many things, right? Like bacon is made along with pork chops and with all the other parts of the pig. So there's no cost of bacon. It's the cost of the pig, and bacon is made out of the pig. So it's erroneous to start focusing on how to reduce the cost of bacon, because you would only really be reducing the cost of pork in general, because all pork is produced at the same time with pigs, along with pig hide or pork rinds, whatever else you can imagine. So the bacon fallacy is thinking that one thing is disconnected from other things that are produced at the same time as it. A really good example is housing and housing prices, right? You have this idea that there's low income housing and there's high income housing and there's middle income housing. But when it comes to the prices and how those prices tend to trend, there's really just the cost of housing. Because if you are able to reduce the pressure on low income housing, suddenly the cost of middle and high income housing creeps down. Well, why is that? Is there less rich people demanding a house? No, it's that people are going to look for the house that is going to fit with whatever is possible for them to get. So if you have more low-income housing, if you reduce the cost of income of housing in the lower income, people that had been seeking out arrangements in the middle-income bracket, maybe like roommates, so people that would have had 3 roommates in a house are now in their own apartment. And so that reduces the pressure on the middle income housing, so that more people who would have a house for their family are going to look at middle income housing instead of being forced to have 2 parents working, go into higher income housing in order to escape from the problems that are there in the middle income housing. So it's one of those things that happens that, like, yes, if you reduce the cost of low income housing by reducing the demand would be one way. So people are leaving the area for various reasons. People leave the area in the low income brackets, and all of a sudden all the cost of housing decreases. And so families that were wanting to buy a single family home, they can buy one. The neighborhoods full of single family homes get better because they're more full of, they're less sort of invaded by lower income people living 6 or 7 people to a house in order to just have some kind of housing. So the housing market works as like a total thing. And yes, some houses cost more than other houses, just like how maybe bacon might cost more than pork chops, or, you know, a pork loin roast might cost more than pork chops or something like that. But really, it's all coming out of the pig. Or if you make an example from a cow, there's like a filet mignon versus a flank steak. One cut is maybe cheaper than another, but they're all coming out of a cow. So the only way that the cost of the filet mignon goes down is if the cost of the cow really goes down. And you're like, well, the people who are excited to buy more beef were never buying the filet mignon. Yes, but it all goes down at once because it's all a joint product. So it's really easy to make that mistake, I think, with a lot of things and view this thing as separate from that thing when they're really all produced jointly. And I think about this sometimes with my business, because in my business, I produce books, music, videos are all produced jointly. And to look at one of those like, okay, videos are making X amount of dollars. Maybe they're not making enough money, so I'm going to get rid of the videos. Okay, all of a sudden the book sales go down. All of a sudden, the Patreon disappears. Okay, maybe I look at the other one. Oh, I'm not making very much money on books right now, so I'll get rid of the books. And it's like the people who were interested in the books were one of the reasons that they watched my videos is they were interested in me as a writer. So the video part starts to go down. So a 360-degree business, a lot of these things are interconnected. If you want to sell merchandise, you have to record the album. This is a thing with artists that are like on tour as well. By the way, the chat is not showing up for me, so if you're there, please let me know. But this is something that happens with artists that are on tour, is it costs you money to make an album and virtually nobody buys it now. You're not going to make any money recording an album. So why make an album? Obviously, what you should do is just get into Kiss mode and tour nonstop. Well, the reason Kiss is able to tour nonstop is they have a big parade of hit albums going back 50 years. They don't have to record any more albums. Metallica could tour forever without having to record any more albums. But if you are any kind of newer artist or just a mid-list band, of which there is a lot, you need to record the album. You have to record the album so the fans have new music that they're excited about so that they'll go see you on tour, which is where you'll make your money. So they'll buy the t-shirt with the album cover on it. They'll buy the vinyl, you know, they'll buy the concert ticket. So it's necessary to produce the album in order to get people to buy all of the higher margin items that you may have that are where you're really going to make your money. So it'd be a mistake to say like, well, clearly since no one buys albums, I should just not record them. You probably still need to record them in order to get people to do the other things, right? So that's something worth thinking about. That's your fallacy of the day. I'm calling it the bacon fallacy, right? It says the feed is blurry. All right, let me see if there's a video setting that is messed up. I don't think there is, but it could be. I think I have a fine bit rate. I could turn up the bit rate if it's looking a little choppy. I can't see it. There's no live preview on my screen either. It's just a frozen thing. I'll check it out on YouTube and make sure kind of what's going on with it. Mute it real quick. Oh, it looks perfectly fine on my screen. So, yep, looks great on YouTube. This is a new camera. I got tired of this thing, the Kia Pro, which doesn't have a bad sensor. It has a pretty good sensor, but the software that goes with it makes it unusable. It will actually blue screen your computer, which is really not preferable to me. Not a preferable situation. So yes, bacon fallacy, worth thinking about. So when people are wondering, hey, how do we improve? How will you know, how will middle class wages rise when we reduce immigration? It's like, you answered your question. The economy is a whole pie. Is that like workers will move according to where the signals are, and if you get rid of the downward pressure on wages for the lower income people, it will actually raise wages like across the board. but it may have negative consequences for people whose income is based off of like capital investment, where it's really all about saving labor or something like that. But anyway, that's another good example. How will reducing the labor, the excess labor in the bottom income brackets raise everybody else's wages? Is that they'll all go up together because it's all one big organism. The workers that would be doing that labor are maybe on unemployment. So if the wages go up, they have the opportunity to do that labor. You reduce the cost of unemployment, right? When those wages are higher, workers that have other alternatives are able to get higher wages doing a different alternative, right? You're able to get more money being a welder because the alternative is, well, I could be a welder for 25 or I could be a framer for 25. Being a framer is easy. I'll just do that. Welding goes up, and then it goes up. Everything goes up across the board. The only probably thing that doesn't is like government work, because those schedules tend to be really sticky. Wages are sticky, but certain kinds of wages are more sticky. All right, first time catching the stream. Thank you. Welcome. Listening on a walk, right? Yeah. So that's probably another good example is wages. We have a total economy, and the wages will go up or down kind of all at once, not always like the same rate across the board. But, if you reduce all the excess labor in the bottom end of the economy, in the unskilled labor category, skilled labor is able to demand a little bit more for their labor as well because of all the alternatives that exist. You have a lot more worker alternatives. More options for workers usually results in workers able to fetch a higher wage. We have examples from the past of this where there's been big events that have reduced that population. One was the Black Death, and the response to the increase in labor, the ability for labor to seek higher wages after the Black Death was for many in the upper echelons, in the noble sphere, to put a cap on wages, to basically say you're not allowed to pay employees more money than this. Because they can demand more money because there's not enough of them. My old job pays nearly $100 an hour now, way more than an indie fantasy writer. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Well, and what do workers do with those extra wages? Some costs go up with wages. That's true, but not all costs. It depends on the product. Many products, labor is a very small percentage of the cost of the product. So a relative increase in farm labor doesn't necessarily massively raise the cost of the final good. Whereas an increase in the cost of labor for plumbing will slightly increase the cost of a house, but if it's just plumbing that goes up, it won't increase it by much. Because the plumbing is produced jointly with all the other things. All right, let's do a little gear demo. This will be fun. Let me turn off this. Let me turn off this music real quick. So let me show this guitar to you, because this is a very weird guitar. It's one of the strangest guitars that I've ever come across, but it's also one of the coolest guitars that I've ever come across. So let's take a look at it. Here it is. Let's get this mic kind of over here. All right, here it is. This is maybe you guys can see it here. Looks a little weird. This is a 1971, I believe, Gibson Les Paul recording. So you can see, recording. This is the model of Les Paul that Les Paul himself used in the late 60s through really for the rest of his life. It's set up totally different from other Les Pauls. It works in a different way. It produces different tones, which I will demonstrate to you. That first song you heard when I was coming in, that was all recorded on this guitar. That was a live performance on this specific guitar that belongs to my neighbor. I think he's going to give it to his son or his grandson, which is great. He'll have a vintage guitar, but I feel like I'm one of the only people in the world that can get the most out of a guitar like this. I'll show you what it does. But it looks different, right? It doesn't have your classic two humbuckers, right? with your 4 knobs. Instead, it has 4 knobs and 4 switches, and the knobs do not work at all like a regular Les Paul. They are quite a bit different. But you do have, they call this the harmonica bridge, but it's a tune-o-matic bridge, a regular stop tailpiece. It has kind of 21.5 frets. So you have an extra fret, and that's to make room for this angled pickup that you have on the neck. This is to emphasize more of the bass harmonics on both pickups. That's why you have that pickup angle. These are low impedance pickups. Okay. Actually, let me talk about some of the other interesting things about the guitar before we get to the pickups and the weird electronics, and I'll demonstrate that stuff. It has the small block inlays from a period specific SG. So if you get an SG from the early 70s, it will have these kinds of inlays. It has a 5-ply inlay around the outside. It is a black and white inlay, but now it will look yellow. And you'll notice that the diamond mother of pearl inlays are yellow. This is because it was lacquered with nitrocellulose finish, which turns yellow over time. So all of the white binding has become yellow. And you can actually see where they've kind of sprayed the edge of the nut. It's also become yellow. If you want to know what the color originally was for the mother of pearl, you'll see it here on the inlays because those are unfinished. So you can see how much the finish actually yellows. This example has a pretty chewed up back of the neck that where the finish has been knocked away by someone digging in with their thumb when they're playing. It has a thin neck. So if you're into 60s Gibson necks, it's a very thin neck, very playable, really easy to shred on, actually. It's like a shredder neck almost. Not quite like an Ibanez Wizard kind of neck, but it's very thin. And you can see just how thin the neck is, hopefully. I could bring my other Les Paul over, which has like a 58 neck, which is very chunky. So it has a volute, which is a feature to help stop headstock breakage, which is a problem throughout it remains a problem with the Les Paul and with the SG. These frets are very, very wide and very low. And that's not just because they're worn down. They are worn from play, but the guitars of this period in the early 70s and the late 60s, we call them fretless wonders because the frets are so low, but it makes a lot of the glissando stuff work. The nut's very low and the action is just very low. So let's plug it in and I'll show you some of the cool stuff that this particular guitar can do. While I plug this in, I think I already have a document open. I'll get to the chat in just a second. Let me plug this in. I think I have this cable. All right. So we're gonna get some line noise because the pre's in my interface here are starting to break down. There's something wrong with them where they are producing. There's like a bad cap in there somewhere, and it's producing a really awful noise. So when I make this live, you're going to hear a hiss. I could, if I want to, I could go through the preamp on my Ableton Push over here, and that one is completely clean. It's totally silent for this setup. But that would require me to do a bunch of other quick setups. So we'll just deal with the hiss for now. You're not going to really notice the hiss a lot unless I, for instance, turn on like a dirtier amp here. And then you're going to hear like a staticky hiss. That's the preamps. It's a problem with my mic preamps. I really need a new interface. Trying to repair those is usually just kind of a pain in the butt here, but this is it with no amp. There's no amp on this, no amp sim. It's just clean. Let me explain what these little knobs and switches do because no one on YouTube has explained this that I can find, and I will show you how it works, and I'll do a separate video that really goes through all of the stuff on this guitar. Okay. Let's see if I can. How can I do this? I'll have to hold it up. I'll have to find another way to do this. All right. So you have 4 knobs: a volume knob, pretty standard. Turn it up, turn it down, it's louder or quieter. This is what's called a decade knob. I'll explain that in a second. You have a 2-band EQ, a high and a low band EQ. You have a phase switch, which puts the pickups in or out of phase with each other. Very cool. You have a high and low Z switch. So you can plug this into a regular amp by putting it on high Z, but I'm going to tell you that you will not get the correct tones if you put it on high Z. It just will not sound correct at all. You need to have it on low Z and run it into a mic preamp and then into your effects loop and then into a power amp if you really want it to sound right. This guitar is really for cleans. Then you have this hat switch and a pickup selector switch. So the pickup selector switch works like what you would expect. You put it forward, it's the front pickup. You put it backward, it's the back pickup. You put it in the middle, it's both. If the phase switches on, it'll be out of phase. And you have the 2-band EQ. Now the tone switch here, this little Tele hat switch, what this thing does is it changes what part of the circuitry is on or off. So if it's all the way down, all the controls are defeated and both pickups are on. Okay, no EQ, no decade switch, both pickups are on. If you have it in the middle position, it turns on the decade switch and it turns on the EQ. And if you have it in the upper position, it turns on the decade switch and defeats the EQ. So you can get quickly between 3 different kind of tonal areas, the bass tone plus 2 other tones, and you can switch all this stuff on the fly pretty easily. Now, the decade switch, this is the weirdest part about this instrument. This switch here is a rotary switch. It looks like a knob. Hear that click? All right. It's a variable high-pass filter, a variable bandpass filter. So there's a bunch of little capacitors on the back of that switch, that rotary switch, and they will change the tone based on opening up or closing down different high-end frequencies. So it produces tonal effects that are totally unlike any other guitar I've ever played. And I'll demonstrate some of those to you real quick here. I'm going to put it on 0 to start. This puts a strong emphasis on the upper frequencies, and in fact, I can crank up the high end and just take a little bit off the low. All of a sudden, it sounds like an acoustic guitar. Hopefully, there's enough sound coming through here that you guys can hear this over on the other side. Okay, we can flip our hat switch to our up position, and then that defeats the EQ, and we can just hear it with the decade switch on. Put it on our front pickup here. It sounds very Strat-like, doesn't it? Sounds very Strat-like to me, and I can even make it more Strat-like here by flipping the decade switch over a little bit. This is without any amp simulator of any kind on, by the way. So there's no amp sim. If I turn an amp sim on, it will get a little noisy, but we could turn an amp sim on to let you hear what this would sound like. I don't have a trim, obviously. That's it, defeated. Really interesting. And we can put it on on 10, which will kind of cut the highs and give you something more like a darker, maybe a jazz tone. Here, I'll cut the treble a little bit. Let me turn off the amp because I think you get a little bit more without the amp here. my most of that clicking's from my DAW. I might need to increase the buffer size. Let's try that real quick. See if that messes everything up. Let's see here, hardware setup. There it goes. I'm going to increase the buffer just a bit. See if that helps. See if that gets rid of the clicking. There we go. One thing I do like about this guitar is it's very easy to get these glissandos because of how it's almost like playing a fretless guitar. And I like this because I can really, you can also turn the decade switch to one of the other brighter settings. Here, this is just the decade switch changing. Here's the decade switch on 10. Very humbuckery sound. We're going to put it down on 5. And let's put it on 0. There's 4. Each one has a different sound. Nice. Sorry, I shouldn't hit that G natural. All that Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. So you can get a cool Strat sound out of this. And if I kind of EQ it down a little bit, we'll just take a little bit of the bass off and kind of emphasize the mid-range a little bit. You get a really great acoustic guitar sound. And you can get this kind of barky, this is the out of phase switch. So you could turn the phase switch on, and then it's out of phase and it barks a little bit. You know, it gets that. And let's play with the decade switch a little bit more. Let's open that up a bit. Right. That kind of nasally sound. A little bit closer to a traditional Paul. Or we get down all the way down there and we can really get more. And I could put the phase switch on and do some interesting effects there. Womp womp. That's with our decade switch. Actually, I'm going to click that over a couple clicks. You just can't get these kind of tones out of one guitar. It's just... This is like the secret of Les Paul. And if you really want to get Les Paul's sound, just put a little delay on it. That 70s Les Paul. Right there. A little more bass. Get a little more acoustic sound going on here. Hold on. A little more emphasis there. Really beautiful sounds that you can get here. So many different tones. So anyway, this is the Les Paul recording. Very, very unique guitar. I need to do like a camera setup where like maybe you can like we can just really see the guitar, like what the hell I'm doing with the controls. Because I'm changing a lot of the controls. I'm not changing any settings on the amp or anything like that. It's purely the control knobs. It's purely this part. It's this part that's changing. Nothing else. Let's get that out of the way. Let me show you. All right, let's get. Like for jazz, I could see like dialing in a little jazz tone in the middle position. And then the upper position on the tone switch, you can get like this really good kind of start with something that really emphasizes the high end. Like that. Let's do it full bore. This is how Les Paul got all those tones on all those albums. He was an inventor. He was very clever. And then we just dial the high end off. And we still have a lot of the... Let me turn that delay off. That's confusing me. All right, so this way... You had that arch top sound. right? You get that great kind of swing sound just by dialing the high end off a little bit, and you can get it even more dark if you want, where it's really dark, but I liked it just kind of. Then you just flip the tone switch up, then you have all of your kind of funkier high end. For a solo, you can really cut. Alright, what chords was I playing? E minor. C major 7. And then what did I have? B7? No, B minor. It was B minor. And then F sharp diminished. And back to E minor. I had a B flat in there. The B flat. Or you could do G minor, I guess. Whatever you want to do, those chords. Fun stuff. All right, so you can do a lot of cool tones. That's my extended demo. I'll do a more edited video. Let me check out the chat, see if anybody has anything to say about that, right? Something about Ukrainian metal band named No Apology. That's cool. Plays this style of guitars. Yeah, these are, yeah, Steve Howe actually used one of these. So Steve Howe used these on several Yes recordings and on his solo records. So Steve Howe used them, and he's the kind of guy that could get the sound out of this. The other guy I think of is probably David Gilmour. I have a guitar that is set up like David Gilmour's. He uses, if you want to get like really chameleon sounds, you can use what he uses, which is a custom set of EMG pickups with an active EQ on them. And so the EQ allows those pickups to sound like humbuckers or single coils or a blend between them as he uses them. And that's how he's able to, especially with his solos, produce so many different tones. Is he's able to operate the EQ on his guitar in such a unique way, plus the pickup combinations, plus the way you play. Remember, like, if you play close to the bridge, very bright. You play further away. Another thing I really like about this, this is no amp. There's no amp shaping this. There's no cab simulator. This is the raw guitar, which sounds amazing that it's a raw guitar. Just incredible, to be honest. That's the raw guitar. Wow, that sounds good. I'm going to figure out how to buy one of these. Not in the budget right now, but maybe somebody wants to trade for one. I don't know. What was I saying? Oh, so it will operate with regular guitar amps, but you're going to lose a lot of the subtlety. You're not going to get the same tones. If I put it on high Z mode, already it'll blow up this input. But if I put it in a regular guitar input, hold on, I'll hook it up real quick so you can hear it. It just doesn't sound nearly as good. There it is. Find the other end of the cable. It's down here in the mess of wires somewhere. Okay. Plug that guy in. Okay, let's go over here. Input 2. So, here's the problem. I put it on here. Mega quiet. You got to turn it on the high Z mode, the high impedance mode. Already, you notice what happened? There's no subtlety to the sound anymore. It's already still very anemic. Has much lower input than my regular guitars. Let me show you, basically, where were we? Okay, yeah. Let's actually shift that over. Hold on. What did I do here? You can see these inputs. There we go. There we go. Okay, you can see it's not anywhere close to peak. If I plug my Parker in, it can dime the preamp. It can blow up the preamp. I usually have to put a pad on it. That's how high output the pickups are on the Parker Fly. But like, let's say I put on the EQ here. So the EQ's on. Nothing. You dial down the bass and the sound just goes away because it's not set up to be a high impedance guitar like a regular guitar. So when you use this, you can only use the first about 20% of the pot to get any kind of tonal change that you want. That's as much bass roll off as you could probably do before there's no volume anymore. So if I want to get that acoustic guitar sound again, it's very hard because the pots are just way more subtle. It doesn't sound bad, but it's like the decade switch doesn't work. Right? I'm switching it. Doesn't do anything. It's like the decade switch just doesn't work. Like, it's such a subtle change that you can't even tell what it's doing. Do you hear much of a change at all? It's terrible compared to the high or to the low impedance mode. So if you want to use this guitar, here's how I would do it. Here's how I do it to use a guitar like this. And there are guitars around with low impedance pickups. Is you use a microphone preamp or an acoustic guitar preamp. And then that will usually give you like a 2 or 3 band EQ that you could further refine the sound if you want to. Then the output on that is line level. You run through your pedal board from there, and then you go into a power amp. So you have the preamp, you run through your pedal board, including whatever kind of distortion effects you want, and then you're going to your power amp from there. So that's how I would do it. Another option would be to use like a low Z to high Z transformer. That's not the one in the guitar, but I think you lose a lot of the subtlety. I think you're much better off going with a mic preamp and then into an amp if you're going to use like a high gain amp, though I would never think about playing high gain tones with this. You totally can. It'll sound awful it'll sound pretty bad when I do it here. Here, I'll it actually won't sound too bad. Let me get some dirt going here. Oh, wrong input. Hold on. There we go. Pretty anemic. Let me put like a little metal sound on it. Let's scoop those mids. Get some gain. Let's hear what it sounds like. You can get the amp sim to do a lot of work here. Doesn't sound right with that amp setting, but then you can kind of dial it in a little bit there, a little bit from there, but it's just not going to sound powerful the way regular Les Paul would. You're going to get a cool lead sound here. algorithm. So yeah, you can. I mean, you could force it. You could force it into the rock mode, but I don't think it works as good as. I'm going to show you these settings that I have here. Right here, let's scoop those mids more scoop, more Metallica. Black Album doesn't really have scooped mids. It has a pretty chunky. Like you could totally, I mean, you could force it into that mold for sure. But I wouldn't choose this to play metal with. I would choose this to do the stuff that I do, like all the clean playing. I would choose this to play jazz. Like if I wanted to play in a big band that was going to cover a lot of different ground, going to do funk, going to do swing, going to do very microphonic there, by the way. Very microphonic pickups, which could be a problem in a high gain situation. There'd be a lot of feedback. Versus like a regular Gibson, they won't be microphonic at all. Speaking of money, what is the book after Water of Awakening? Needle Ash. I need to pick that up after I finish the Dexter series. So it's Water of Awakening, Needle Ash, and then King Leper. What platform do you stream with? Your guitar sounds nice and clear. So I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. It's let me shrink this down because this is a giant window that's taking up 4K of space or whatever it is here. Let me shrink this down so we can see kind of nice window here. I don't need this. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so now we have like a nice little live window. Okay, so over on my master, my main out, I have this. This is the plugin that I'm using. And you can put this anywhere in your DAW and it'll work in any DAW. This is the Restream. This is available from Reaper. So you click this thing and here's our little settings. We have identifier default, receive audio, we have send audio. So this is just on my main mix out. So it's just, we'll send all the channels because all the channels eventually, all roads eventually lead to the main mix. The cue, there's a cue out that's the same. This won't do the cue at all. So you won't hear the metronome, right? Like if I turn on the metronome here and like, where's the metronome? Metronome on. You could probably hear it through my mic, but if I kill my turn my mic back on. So that's a cool thing that I can run a click track and it doesn't go into anything. All right, so that's on send to local broadcast. Okay, this is the Restream plugin. It's available from the makers of Reaper. Now you're gonna see some compounding stews here. That's gonna look a little weird. From here, I have this thing DAW/Restream. This is a custom audio source. Okay. If I go to filters, you'll see I have one filter. I have the Restream filter. So you can add VST filters to this. This is in OBS. And this will be the Restream standalone plugin. And you can hit close plugin interface, open plugin interface. Here it is. You click receive audio MIDI. So it'll receive the local broadcast. So it creates like a virtual patch cable. I don't know what to call it. And then it'll send that audio through for you. Okay. There it is. And that's the way that works. Hopefully you were able to see that. Were you able to see that? Let me open it again. So you can go to settings, audio. You can create a new global audio one. This one says mic auxiliary audio 3. cable output VB virtual audio cable. So it has to be set on something. So this is just a dummy thing. You can Google this. VB audio virtual cable is what you can Google. This is not a real input. This is just a thing for it to exist so we could put the filter on it. And all the audio is actually coming from this filter, which is the Restream standalone filter plugin. There, I'm sorry, that was hiding behind my face. There you go. So Restream standalone filter plugin. It looks like this. Okay, and it's on receive audio. Receive audio. Okay, and that's how we do it. And then it's nice and clear. No having to run physical cables out and into something. You don't have to do any of that. So it makes it a lot cleaner and easier to manage. So hopefully that gave you the right information. I can do a video exactly on how I do that. Yeah, okay. So OBS is what I use. It's really versatile for this kind of thing. This way I can run my DAW, and it'll work with any DAW. So it'll work with Pro Tools, or it'll work with, whichever one you use. It'll work with Reaper. And if you don't want the main mix, you can just put it on one channel if you want. It'll just send the audio from that one channel. Or, whatever you want to do. So I have it on the main channel. That way everything's here. And by the way Ableton works, I can put other things before here. So like if I want a compressor, let's put a compressor on the whole mix. So we can do like a basic compressor here, or, let's do a preset. Turn that off, because that's like incredibly compressing it. Let's try something like, maybe we want a gentle filter here. Okay. We can just put a little compressor on it, and this will go here. Or we can have this afterwards. So it's just coming out of the speakers and not being broadcast. So the order of it is like, now this is going in here, but you could have extra effects over here if you wanted to. I don't know what they would be, but, you could do that. Let's delete that. I don't want that compressor. I don't use a lot of compressors. Use OBS for recorded videos, only once for streaming. I record videos with OBS as well, but I do stream with it. And I use Restream, so you can set up an account with Restream to go to multiple locations. Right now, I just use the free version, because that free version allows me to go to Twitter and YouTube. That's where my main audience is, so I don't worry too much about any of the other sites. I just do those. Two, and those are the ones that I like. And yeah. But if you wanted to go to like 3-4 different sites, you absolutely could set that up, and it's not hard to do. Let's get like a cool lead sound here. You can just dial off the high end a little bit, and I could dial off the low end too to get a more mid-range focused sound. And then I'll use the decade. Ooh, we lost all the volume there. You get some cool lead sounds with that. But this guitar is really not set up well for this sound. To me, it's all about the cleans. And you're not even going to hear them right. So let me change the input around. Go back to low impedance mode, and you can hear immediately I haven't changed anything except the impedance, in the impedance setting here. Oh, I turned off the recording. There we go. Ooh, do you hear how much better the tone is? much more of the upper end of the harmonic spectrum is maintained. It's much more like an acoustic instrument and much less like an electric guitar. We could do like an A/B test real quick. Let's do it with the other input. All settings the same. All settings the same. Exactly the same. Let's hear the difference. Hear how much how much deader it is on the high impedance setting. It's like night and day. Change that input again. Over to number 3. Oh, wait. Turn the transformer. There's a lot more subtlety when you're on the low impedance mode. Even if you were to compensate for like the difference in inputs and stuff, it's a pretty big difference to me, to my ears, you know. So anyway, let's move on from that. I probably actually need to wrap up a little bit early tonight because I've got some sick kids and I need to take care of them, feed them some dinner and stuff, and just generally help. So I think I'm gonna pass on doing the live writing. We'll try to do that some other night, or as time allows. Get back into writing that next Eternal Dream book, which has lots of adventures in the East. Adventures in the Oriental East. But I thought I'd show this to you. Yeah, you can get the... Let's get an acoustic guitar sound. Here we go. Acoustic guitar sound. Isn't that crazy how much different? You just flip a couple switches and... There it is. It'll start to sound like an acoustic guitar. Put that in phase. Like, there's no amp sim, there's nothing on that. And if I put an amp sim on, I feel like it loses something. I feel like it loses something big when I do that. Like it loses something, I think because it's getting shaped by impulse responses kind of twice in a row. And I think that's messing it up a little bit. So anyway. Some interesting tones still. You can still get some cool tones with an amp. All right. I think that'll be it for the guitar demo. Just give me a second and I will close this down. Kind of fun to look at historic instruments that are very different, you know? Like, I don't know if a modern player could use this correctly. And if you don't know what you're doing, if you weren't like thinking the way Les Paul was, you probably just wouldn't be able to use this instrument properly at all. And I do feel like sometimes that I'm the only one of the few people that could like actually use an instrument like that to its actual potential. But I don't know. Most people just like to plug in and like dial in an amp sound and just go. You know, just go. Actually, I'm going to take a short break and just check on some things. And if everything's going good, I should probably call it. Make sure I'm around. That's fun. See if there's any other talks. Anything else to talk about. I've seen some people try to frame the Peste Noire as good thing because it led to a material improvement of living standards for the survivors and to set the stage for an early modern era. Even assuming that was true, though, that's such a heartless perspective. Malthusianism, not even once. No, the Black Death was really terrible. But, the truth is, if you look back at history, you'll find that the ethos of the Renaissance was already present in the late medieval. It was not born out of the Black Death, nor did depopulation of Europe help it economically. It crushed it economically. The fact that workers could demand a higher wage was maybe good for them, but it was part and parcel with a major economic collapse that happened in Europe at that time. So it was almost all bad. The Black Death was, I can't think of it. There's really, it's like the people who survived might have been able to, were they better off? Probably not, because more people would have been, more workers would have been, more stuff to buy, right? The economy was really destroyed. I don't think it made people reevaluate things philosophically, other than there was this belief that somehow the Renaissance would be like a new awakening, like a new birth of the West, a new birth of man. And it was to some extent, right? But you'll find that the late medieval really does kind of smush into the Renaissance. It's not like people woke up in the year 1400 and were like, no, we are in the Renaissance, hooray! You know, it just doesn't work that way. Like, history smushes into other pieces of history, and the high medieval is very close to the Renaissance. What we think of as Renaissance warfare, for instance, is really just an extension of the high medieval. And then the high medieval decays as Renaissance warfare gets more advanced. You have different ways of waging war. It's kind of interesting. It's always interesting to think about with stuff like that. But anyway, we did have an example where, you know, there was a loss of labor because of the Black Death, and workers wanted higher wages. And so the response for the people who paid them was to declare it illegal to pay them. You were not allowed to pay them more than a certain amount of a, quote, fair wage, because that would be bad, you know. Thoughts on the Epstein debacle? I never expected anything to come of it, but it seems like a lot of people really did. I never expected anything good to come of it. I never expected us to have any kind of closure or revelation on what was going on Epstein's Island, or what he was doing, or what his role was. I expected us to get nothing. We're just going to have the speculation that we've always had. And then, you know, because it's either two things. Either Trump's basically telling the truth and is a big nothing burger, in which case, why didn't you say that before? And how, you know what I mean? Or it's something else that it's so big that they can't actually say it, right? Like it would implicate a major strategic ally such as Israel or something like that. Although we don't have a formal alliance with Israel at all, by the way. And if we did, they would have to be subject to nuclear treaties, right? It's weird, but like, you know, there's some kind of foreign intelligence thing there that they can't reveal because it would endanger too many things. That would be another option, right? And then you're left wondering, well, what is it? And shouldn't we be able to know it? And shouldn't we be able to make that decision? It's like, I don't know. The truth is that the government operates in such a shadowy manner in terms of its international policies that, you know, we just kind of take it for granted that the CIA is a shadow government assassinating people on our behalf. And no one ever questions the necessity of that. They're like, of course we need the CIA to be conducting shadow wars at all times in all places against whomever our enemies are. Hopefully not me, right? Hopefully not us. We just take it for granted that there needs to be this intelligence apparatus that's doing this. So those are the two options that I see. Either it really was a big nothing burger the whole time, or whatever it was, there's just nothing really to see now. Like the evidence has been destroyed and it's always been a nothing burger. Or it was something so significant that national security is at risk, right? Because if it was just a political thing, I think probably one side or the other would have such a strong incentive to reveal that it would have been revealed, right? So we've had a Republican and a Democrat and another Republican, and yet nothing's come out. It's probably because it's either so strategically important that it really is a bipartisan, we can't strategically do this, or there's just nothing there to see, you know? I expect at this point the legend has gotten away from reality. When I hear some of the conspiracies, they sound so absurd. I feel a lot of people hype themselves up to an absurd degree. I agree. And when you hype up and you have this expectation, it's kind of like it's a big disappointment when it turns out it's just nothing. There's just nothing there, you know? So I totally understand that. And which one do I think it is? Well, I actually think it's probably a big nothing burger. And if you're wondering why the current administration hyped it up and allowed it to be hyped up so much, it's because it was politically expedient at that time. So during the election season, it was useful to have a big conspiracy theory to get people hyped up and angry, and it kind of encapsulates how people felt about the Uniparty and the current administration, but also all government administrations going back dozens of years, about how they operate, how the politicians are evil and like pedophilic, or there's lots of little conspiracy theories that are put forward, but I think the point is that it was politically useful to hype it up and say, we have a list and we're going to give you the list. And then eventually it comes time, it's like, okay, you can give us the list. It's kind of like the JFK files, right? You can give us the list. And it's like, there's no list. There was nothing. We were just holding paper so that you'd vote for us. You know? I guess that's my feeling on that. I mean, every country has an intelligence agency. I doubt if America and Israel, at that matter, knows that. Knows. I'm sure 90% of countries know. The fact no country, even our enemies, has dropped it says a lot. Yeah. Surely somebody else knows what's up and would have it in their interest to reveal this information. It's kind of like the instability of like oligopolies, is that whoever moves first gets all kinds of advantages. So someone would have done it, is how I feel. I could be mistaken, but I think the Restream for Windows is for Windows only. I'll look into this further. Okay, so Restream is maybe it is for Windows only. It is a plugin though. Maybe it only works on Windows. I haven't, because I stream on Windows. It's from the Reaper RIA plugins. It's a VST plugin. But maybe it doesn't work on Mac. So it would work as a VST, but maybe Mac OS limits what you can do with that. So I'm sorry if that doesn't work on a Macintosh. Now I'm an owner of Reaper. I haven't used it in a long time, but I do own Reaper, and it's a good DAW to use. Yeah, I do blame Trump for this. This is Frankenstein's monster. He created it, and now it has grown out of his control, and now it's turned against him. He shouldn't have fed into the hype. Well, I think also he's very clever, and he's like, we're midway through year one. Midterms are not until next year. Let's rip the Band-Aid off about this Epstein shit right now, and we have 18 months for people to forget that it was a big nothing burger that I used to get votes. And hopefully in 18 months, all the policies will be working well enough that we can do well in the midterms. You know what I mean? So, could he have won the election without that? I don't know. It all goes together, right? He's building a coalition, and conspiracy theorists and people, anti-government types, were part of that coalition. Okay. And so I think the Epstein stuff goes along with that, with the fact that those kinds of people were part of that coalition. If you look at it like RFK, so coalition building is really important, and it's how he got elected. You have kind of the tech right. He's like, okay, we'll get the tech right. We'll get the people that are like Elon Musk, more libertarian people. Hey, come on board. We'll get and then those coalitions tend to break apart as inevitably their interests conflict. So Elon Musk was getting very upset that there's a spending bill to deport people, right? So, but that was necessary to get all of those other voters, all of the middle class and lower class voters that want some relief on the downward pressure on wages. We have to deport people if you want wages to stabilize again. It has to happen. If you want housing prices to go down, right? If you want cost of goods to go down, like all these things that have pressure by just adding more and more people to the mix without any kind of extra thing. Normally when population grows, people have kids, and those kids are gradually going into the economy to buy new things and replace old people. But in this case, it's no, just we're going to have 50 million people just add in as adults, right? It's different than 50 million children being born. Very different. So you gotta be real about that. So yeah, that's what I kind of think about the Epstein thing. I think my thought really falls down on there was probably something. He probably was a guy who really enjoyed the power broking thing, like introducing people to other people. And there was probably also libertine stuff, Marquis de Sade kind of crap, where he hired prostitutes and things like that, and some of them were underaged. And that was very scandalous for people that were who wanted to enjoy his parties. Just like a little tiny sliver of 18th century France there, right? But I feel like there'd be so many interested parties that would be wanting to get this stuff out. To do this 180 and say that it's nothing. A lot of people are like, it's a betrayal, and it is, but I think it was probably just he was hyping it up and kind of lying about it to begin with. And that's what we got. That's what we got with this. So I'm going to stream for 7 more minutes, and then I'm probably going to call it a day because I do need to get going here. It's interesting to think about, though. It's interesting to think about. I did make a video that I didn't release called The Horror of Leftist Tenants. Maybe we can watch this again, because I didn't want to release it because I realized I was possibly scandalizing people that were friends of mine in the past that have okay lives now. And I don't want to scandalize those people, so I don't need to release a video. But I found a great video on X of someone cleaning up after these crazy tenants. So I did have some anecdotes about that. If you want, I'll show that to you. Give me a minute and I will find it and we'll take a look at it, because I just thought it was a great piece of media to talk about this kind of thing. Let me find my bookmarks. It's in here somewhere. Oh my gosh, have you guys heard about this? So let's take a look at some of my bookmarks here. Not all of them. Oh boy, I bookmarked something really funny that I don't want to show on YouTube. But anyway, let's take a look at this. All right, here we go. Let's do the pop out. Pop out's good. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. Da, 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 da. Okay. All right, here we go, guys. Let's take a look at this. All right, I can even like do chat. Here's chat, and here's this, and okay. All right, here we go. Cleaning out of evictions. Okay, so the thing about this is, I have actually seen houses that are like this, and it reminded me, I was having flashbacks of like this house I used to go to, and from friends I had in college that would party, and this is what their house looked like. It was just chaos. And then they moved to multiple houses, and all the other houses looked like this. I'd go to these houses and it'd be full of these people who became communists in the university and started to live like this. So they would put posters on the ceiling. They would throw paint on the walls. They would leave garbage everywhere, like the posters on the ceiling for sure. They were communists. They lived their lifestyle in a communistic fashion, left their poor fish behind, but like they lived their lives in a communistic fashion. Like, we're going to have all our property in common. Meanwhile, they don't own the property. They're renters. And while they do that, they actually take joy in destroying the property, because first of all, they view it as personalizing their property. We're making it ours. Even though they don't own it, they're renting. And if the landlord has to pay to fix it, that's good, because landlords are part of the bourgeois. They're part of the bourgeoisie, and they should lose their money. They should have their floors destroyed. They should have their ceilings destroyed. We should be able to paint whatever we want because it's ours, and it's ours because we live in it. And the landlord doesn't really own, you know what I mean? Like they hate the landlord, so they take joy in doing this. If you were to give them the house with a free deed, they would do this to the house too. They would destroy it because they view the destruction of their property as personalizing it, as making it theirs. They're putting their mark on it by painting the ceiling and things. And even though it looks terrible in a postmodern sense, it's theirs because it expresses their inner communist ethos. So it's part of the ethos to do this. They enjoy destroying the property. That's the big thing. But I remember they named their house after a Star Wars planet. One of these houses. There were multiple houses like this. But they named their house after a Star Wars planet. So that connection with like the nerd culture to crazy leftist pipeline, there's a connection there, right? They would have beer bottles everywhere. They actually, not even bottles. They couldn't afford bottles. They drank Pabst Blue Ribbon. I don't know why they like Pabst Blue Ribbon so much, but they loved Pabst Blue Ribbon. I thought it was piss swill. I thought it was terrible, but they loved Pabst Blue Ribbon. And that's what they drank. They'd have a beer full of Pabst Blue Ribbon. They would actually work for a living. They had menial jobs. None of them had any real job. Or in order to have a real job, you have to have an ethos that encourages you to like have skills and demand lots of money. They worked jobs like they worked at the hotel. They worked at the tea house. They were bartenders, or just menial nothing jobs that they then used to have all their free time spent doing drugs and drinking alcohol and destroying their property, falling ass backwards into debt. And by the time they get evicted, if you've never known people like this, when they get evicted, this is really just a bump in the road for them, right? Nothing that they left behind has any value. They view it as valuable while they're using it because they say so, but when it's time to leave it behind, they don't actually care about it. They move into another house and do the same thing there. I knew a guy who basically got evicted. He ended up living on someone's couch, putting a curtain around his like sleeping pad in their living room, and just didn't leave, you know? And the new house looked exactly like the old house. It was completely trashed all the time. They would staple up pornography on the walls because they thought it was funny, like gay porn. All these sorts of things that they would do. Having the cheapest possible everything that you can imagine. It's kind of like they were excited to like hook up an NES because the NES was not the current system. That's why they were excited about it. It was different, not because they loved NES games. They really couldn't spend their time playing NES games or collect any because they spent all their money on booze. But yeah, they lived like this, and they would just write things on the walls. They would argue with each other about who had to do what, but they could never really decide on anything with their communal lifestyle because nobody had any real buy-in. The only buy-in we're destroying this other person's property together. Another little anecdote was that my wife actually owned a house before we were married and had tenants that destroyed the house. And they had destroyed the house to such a degree that she had to surrender the house to the bank because it would have cost tens of thousands of dollars to clean up a mess like this, to repaint, to fix all the things that are broken, to get the smell out of the carpet, right? You'd have to completely rip up the floors, change all the floors, repaint, clean up all the garbage. You would have to pay people, and it cost tens of thousands of dollars of materials and hundreds of hours of labor in order to fix devastation like this. And it was so big and she was living in another city at the time that she had to let the house go. It was a house that she had bought and originally lived in. She had moved out of it and rented it because she had had an opportunity in LA, but had all thought maybe I'll come back. But that was it. That was the end of the house because it would have cost so much to fix the house, and the house was already underwater as far as its value. Remember, this was after the housing crash, that it just wasn't worth it to keep the house. Better to let the bank have it and move on with your life because they at least have the capital to try to fix it, or they have the ability to hold on to it for a long enough time that they could get the value back out of it, you know? So it's a really crappy situation. They often don't think that they think the landlord has infinite money because he owns a house and doesn't have a mortgage on the house, right? Usually you have a mortgage on the house and the rent is paying the mortgage. Even if you are not fully covering the mortgage with the rent, you're hoping to get your money back out of it with equity. So very often the landlord is not making any money per month with the rent. He's making $0. Rather, all he's making is equity through the rent. And that's because he actually was able to buy the house and was able to take on the risk of having tenants. And it is a risk because the tenants could possibly completely destroy your house, obliterate its value, and leave you in a place where you can't get anything done there. So I thought I'd share that. What was another thing? Oh my gosh, this. Oh man. There was a family. This family decided to move to Russia. An American vlogging family. What blew me away about this vlogging family is they're a vlogging family with 7,000 subscribers. Now, I'm not judging anybody for having not enough subscribers, but to be deep enough in that crazy hole with only 7,000 subscribers, like, I can't understand that. This family moved to Russia. The husband joined the Russian army. They don't speak Russian. They moved there to avoid the LGBTQ stuff in the United States. They could have just moved to Alabama, but no, they decided to move to Russia. And here they are in Russia. And, 3 weeks of training, and then he's off to fight in Ukraine in his 40s. Does that sound like a smart idea? It seems really, really stupid to me, and actually insane to do that, to move your family to Russia to avoid the LGBTQ agenda. Now, I could see somebody saying, we've got to get out of the United States because of, a desire to be by their home culture. Their home culture is the United States, right? So they're abandoning their home culture to go. This is like defection. It's like I could have his citizenship revoked for fighting in the Russian army. Insane. Why would you do this? Like, I get going, okay, well, at least Russia doesn't have like the global homo thing going on. Is that worth losing everything? How about you fix it at home, right? Insane. Everyone everywhere is talking about Epstein. I'm just here for the secret of keeping most of my hair indefinitely. I have most of my hair still, but I've lost a lot. I've lost quite a bit. My hair is not nearly as thick as it used to be. You can look at the old videos. I had a lot of hair fall out after COVID, actually, and it hasn't all come back. I need to get a haircut to kind of get it all the same length, because I have like a bunch of strands of hair that are kind of really long and brown. Look, there's like brown. Ooh, brown hair. And then some that are a bunch that are like this long, because I just shed all my hair after I got sick. Like COVID was no joke. It was bad in that first wave. So all my hair fell out with COVID. Slowly grew back. My toes all turned red and purple. Who thinks joining the army, the foreign army, during an active war was a good idea? This guy thought it was a good idea. He was told he'd be fixing vehicles or something. It's like, nope, he's going to go fight on the ground war. I came here to escape the neoliberal nightmare. Oh, man, that's a good one. Yeah, so I've definitely lost a lot of hair, and it's pretty great. So we're at a point where, like, am I going to dye? Am I going to dye the hair, or am I going to, am I going to let it stay the way it is? I should adjust my camera a little bit. Let's play with the camera. No. I want this. Properties. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. Configure video. Let's check this video configuration out. Now, I could crank up the Ooh, yeah. I start turning red if I crank the contrast up too much. And if I crank the brightness up too much, I'm like, there we go. There we go. Now I could go sharpness. Watch what happens with this. Look how sharp I can get. Looks a little weird. The gamma. Let's turn that gamma down a bit. White balance. I look healthier with this. Look a little more tan. And actually, these walls are cream, so the white balance is always incorrect because the cream walls throw it off. So it actually should be somewhere around there, I think. I don't want to look too yellow, but obviously I'm not blue. You hit it on auto, and it's like, that's pretty good. And then I can play with the gain a little bit. Anyway, new camera. I can turn the exposure down. Now I'm in the dark. Turn the gain up. What's up? I think I like about there. I don't like to rely on gain for shutter. Never looks quite right. Anyway, this is a new camera. It's by eMeet, some Chinese camera. It can do 4K, but I haven't made it do that yet. So that's what's up. As a black guy, my hairline remains the same as in my high school days. There's a cluster of white hair growing though. I kind of look like a kid from Soul Eater. Yeah. If you wanted to avoid, well, I've met plenty of bald black guys. I meet a lot of black guys who shave their head too, but I've met plenty of bald black guys as well. I don't think being black like saves you from the baldness gene. But I do notice that like my hair gets like, you notice when white hair gets thinner because it gets closer to the head. Whereas like thinning of curlier hair, you don't notice it as much. Like you don't notice the volume loss. Whether it's more like Greek curly or it's African curly, you just don't notice it quite as much. So, but I met plenty of black guys who are just, male pattern baldness going on. So they just shave their whole head. That's probably like, and I'm at a point where like, am I going to try to like look max in my 40s, or am I just like, am I going to dye my shit? And like, because I see so many rock stars that are still dyeing their hair. Like Nuno Betancourt dyes his hair black and it looks good. He looks way younger as a result, but like, it's fake, right? It's fake. So do I want to be fake, or do I want to be fake and like look good? Or do I want to just like be all natural, be real? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? Should I be fake? My teeth are fake, but that's correcting like something that was broken. I don't know. I'm not sure which side of the fence I should be on. It's like, because once you start dyeing your hair, then you gotta like do the roots and like, should I get on Propecia and stuff to stop it from thinning? Get on the standard stack. Get on what is it? Finasteride and minoxidil. That kind of stuff. I've noticed graying through the years, but the hairline doesn't look that different as an outside observer. Yeah. I've always had a big forehead, but it's definitely, I'm still like Norwood. I'm still not a high Norwood, but it's a little thinner here and it's a little thinner around the temples. That is true. If you wanted to avoid glaucoma, there's plenty of other places you could go. China for one, and they're not in a war right now, or Japan. Honestly, I can't believe a government would lie to get people to join the army. What kind of backward civilization would mislead people with promises of greats to get them to join up? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I have to decide. I'm on the precipice. Am I gonna dye the beard and the hair? How would that look? I could try it out. I could always like try it out, and then like if it's not good, cut all my hair off or something. I don't know. I could start with the beard and get that like Snowy Shaw look. Just dye the beard like a dark color and leave the hair gray, some like Geezer Butler or whatever. But yeah, all the old rock stars, I mean, they all dye their hair. I kind of like Rob Halford not dyeing his beard though. Like, I dig that. And same thing with who am I thinking of? Tom Araya. Tom Araya doesn't dye his hair. He lives somewhere around here too. Tom Araya does. Like Rob Halford with like the white beard. Like, I think it's cool now. It's like, dude, I'm an old man. I'm just going to have the white beard. It's going to be cool. Is there any other like rock star who just like lets themselves look old? I don't know. I can't think of any. They like aren't trying somehow to avoid looking old. Honestly, yeah, it's a hard thing. Like, how old? Rob Halford's 73. And he looks 73. And that's fine. Like, we should be okay with like people looking their age. Like, it's okay to look like a venerable white wizard. Right? Or do I want to look young? That's the question. I look a little bit older than I actually am. I always have, because I started going gray when I was 19. So I've always looked a little older than I actually was. But, I don't know. I could go either way with it. Maybe people will give me an opinion. Anyway, I'm going to call it here for tonight. Let me link the new book, King Leopard. Where is it? Pre-order it. Physicals will be released at the same time. They'll actually be released a couple days ahead of time. Make sure you're on the mailing list, and I can let everybody know when the physicals are available to order. They'll be earlier than the ebook, so that things can get to places at the same time. Yeah. So anyway, there's that. this thing. Patreon. I need to post some of the live write stuff on Patreon. I'll come back maybe later in the week and do another live write. We'll see what's up. But that's it for today. Have a good one. Let me get some music going here. Here's some music. Yeah. And I'll see you all next time. Next Wednesday or a random stream in between.